Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and I'm joined by two of my wonderful colleagues today, starting with Maxwell Meyers!
Fresh off the cryogenic freeze tube.
That is quite an image. I'm picturing you, like, emerging phoenix-like from, this icy, tomb-like encrusting thing.
See, I was imagining that line, that part in Futurama when he goes, I know what people want to hear when they get them frozen. He goes, the bathroom's over there, and then just bolts.
That's what everyone wants to hear when they get frozen. Also here we have Mo Shaunette, and he has an amazing green fidget spinner.
It's not amazing, it's just a fidget spinner.
Give it a spin so our audience can hear the little horror.
Can you hear that?
I can hear it.
We'll find out.
We'll figure it out in post.
We'll fix it in post. It's good.
Well, we are here today to do a podcast about two Luc Besson films.
Zoot alors.
Very good. Oh, we're gonna have to
French.
We're gonna have to subtitle this, aren't we?
Oh man, we're gonna have to do this one in black and white.
Oh, to be oh so classy. We're
not to start smoking, wearing berets.
I have a beret upstairs.
I got a bike with a baguette on the back. Don't worry.
Get real into existentialism.
Camus. Well, we're going to talk about The Fifth Element, which this is the 20th anniversary, I believe.
Woo!
But we also have a new Besson film of a very similar nature in theaters, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
Okay.
We're going to talk about both of them. We're going to cycle through the many eccentricities of these both very, very intriguing films. And I just want to start off by starting with you, Max. I know the answer to this, but our audience doesn't. Are you a fan of The Fifth Element, and how did Valerian compare to it for you?
I am a huge fan of The Fifth Element. I didn't get to watch it in the theaters when I was a kid, but I wanted to, and then one day it came on to TBS and watched it, fell in love with it there, and I can't stop watching it. It's probably one of my favorite like sci-fi romantic movies. Like, I know, there's definite lines. And Valerian kind of compared, it wasn't as good, but it wasn't a bad movie, and I've been having to sift through my emotions for the last 12 hours. But comparatively, I would say Valerian is not as good as Fifth Element, but then again, a lot of people said Fifth Element wasn't a very good movie when it came out. 20 years later, look at it now. So, who knows? Maybe time will tell.
Mo, what about you?
For me, I was not a big fan. I was not a big fan of The Fifth Element, but not for disliking it, just for never having actually sat down and watched the whole thing start to finish, because that was something that came on reruns all the time, and that's one of those movies that my dad, if he's flipping channels, he'll just leave it on and just watch it until the commercial and then move on to something else. But I watched bits and pieces of it. I watched it for the first time, start to finish, in anticipation of this. And it's solid. It's fun. I think it does have a little edge over Valerian, but I think they're very similar, just in terms of of them being very straightforward, simple narratives wrapped around these really weird, eccentric sci-fi imaginings of the future. And they compare very, very well.
Yeah.
To me, in my mind.
Yeah. No, they're very similar in a lot of ways, which we'll get into. But I'm a newly minted Fifth Element fan. With you, Max, I saw it at the Hollywood Theater, and I was not prepared for what it was going to be at all, because I mean really, how can you be?
Well, you went in blind too. You didn't watch the trailer or anything.
Oh yeah, I knew nothing. I mean, I had a vague. I sort of imagined maybe it would be kind of Blade Runner-esque, given that it's in a... I know.
Oh my.
I mean, because got a big macho action star with a big teeming metropolis, and as anyone who's seen it knows, as you guys know, judging by your very loud guffaws there, and very well justified guffaws, it's really more it's part space opera, it's part screwball comedy. It's part really, really good fashion show. I mean, it's just
it's a true circus.
It's a true circus.
I wouldn't say it's a good fashion show, but it's a consistent fashion.
It's a consistent fashion show. Yes, and it's just I wasn't prepared for how strange, in a good way, it was going to be, and I appreciated that. I appreciated the I have a feeling this word is going to come up a lot in this podcast. The eccentricity of it. And, I mean, I think I sort of thought that, maybe Besson would mellow a bit with age, and that maybe Valerian would be a bit more restrained.
Why would you want him to?
I would never want him to.
Well, I thought, it's a much bigger budget. I thought he was going to have a lot, more writing on it. He would want to play it safe. That was not the case at all. Valerian...
And you get Luc Besson to do sci-fi. He's going to do Luc Besson sci-fi.
Well, that's the thing,
so
and that's why I like it. And Valerian is kind of one of those movies that nestled in my head. And the more I think about it, the more I like it. And there's just there's a very, unrestrained sweetness and goofiness and kitschy cartooniness to it that I found very, refreshing, in an era of blockbusters where even the god-awful Tom Cruise Mummy reboot was really pompous and kind of like swollen up with all these, grandiose, franchise-building sentiments. And Valerian is really just out to be something very Besson-ish, and I don't quite know what that is, but I do like it.
Unapologetically Besson.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's earnest.
Yeah,
it's very upfront about itself, which that's not something you see a lot in big sci-fi, because big sci-fi at this stage it has to be either really smart or it has to be a name brand. So it's got to be like a Star Trek or a Star Wars, and it's rare to see something that's so earnest about itself with $100 million budget.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about those two distinctions, I mean, this is worlds away, not only from, say, Star Trek Beyond or, Rogue One or whatever, but, a more classic / contemporary sci-fi film like Arrival. I mean, you never saw Amy Adams wear a green jumpsuit, and fight a Catron. Although I would watch that movie. Yeah. We'll see.
Who wouldn't watch that movie?
Oh, I know.
Amy Adams can do anything at this point.
Yeah.
Where's her Oscar? Damn it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Don't get me started.
Don't get me started.
I have to diverge for a second. I did give her a T.H.O. award for Arrival.
Very prestigious.
I know.
Is it in
That's
the mail?
better than an Oscar. Come on.
It's just an orange
mailed
that was
that months
randomly
ago.
sent to her.
Does it come with a cash prize?
It's a gold-plated orange with 1,000 and
With $1,000
something
and
more
gift cards
dollars.
to Voodoo Donuts.
Hey, we gotta get it in the city somehow.
Oh, Voodoo! They're such a diligent sponsor of ours.
Yes,
Couldn't do it without
please send
them.
us free donuts.
Well, another question I wanted to ask you, and I have my thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. Starting with you, Mo.
Yes.
We've established Valerian, The Fifth Element. These are very atypical movies. They're not what you'd expect. Given the genre. Maybe they're what you'd expect, given that they're directed by Besson. But I just want to hear from you. What the heck are these movies about?
They're about love. That's the simple version. I mean, the fifth. It's in both cases, and this is something that kind of irks me, but also I admire the consistency of it. Is that the female leads, Lilu in The Fifth Element and Laureline in Valerian,
right,
are both characters who are driven by emotion, by their feelings for the world around them and their feelings for their male partners. And in the case of Valerian, there's the moment when each of them gets kidnapped, each of them has to save one another. Valerian does it through subterfuge and action hero bravado, and Laureline does it through her emotional connection to Valerian, which I feel like you could do some better than that, but and Fifth Element, it's, love saves the universe, love saves the world.
Yeah.
Because love is the fifth element.
You said the title of the movie.
Which, we're... I mean, to back up for a second, I mean, you might think that, the movies are about love, well, that's, a common thing. It's actually not. It's actually kind of radical, I think, because if you really look at, what most contemporary movies do, lots of movies preach love, lots of movies, extol the virtues of love. Not many movies really convincingly portray love, or, convincingly make a heartfelt argument that seems genuine about why love, is an important force in the universe. And, I mean, I have some, doubts about, the overall seriousness of the films, because, I think they're sort of satirical in a way, but there's a kind of purity in their faith in love, and their faith in sort of the compassion of these characters. And, and I didn't think about what the comparison between Valerian and Laureline, but that is kind of funny, I mean, Valerian, to rescue Laureline, goes to a weird strip club run by space cowboy Ethan Hawke, where Rihanna is, morphing and doing it a lot better than the Bounty Hunter in Attack of the Clones, by the way. But Max, what do you think?
I'm sorry, what was the question? We got a little tangentially.
Let me recreate the original emotional outburst. What the heck are these movies about?
Oh my goodness. Well, they are. I think they're both, about love. Very simply, I think that's ultimately what they end up coming back around to. But I think they're also team up movies. Essentially, you got at least two characters teaming up to do different things. One is to save the entire world, and the other one is a little bit smaller scale, which is weird to think of for a Luc Besson film.
Which is, it's also saving the world, just a different part of the world.
Yeah,
that's true.
and
Or
more like
saving a race of people.
Yeah, one corner of the world, and but I really liked Cara Delevingne.
I was really pleasantly surprised.
She was
This is gonna
take it from someone who hated her in Suicide Squad.
She was not. Well, that was my thing. Is I haven't seen Cara Delevingne in something that I really liked yet, and I especially did not like
Paper
Towels.
I almost said Paper Towels, which would be a odd movie.
And I know that's what you did say. I was like, is this produced by Brownie? But I hadn't seen her. I didn't see her in that. I saw her in Suicide Squad, and she was not well used. But was anybody well used in that movie?
She did. I think she did the best she could. I'm inclined to give the actors in Suicide Squad a lot of the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
it's like you're doing the best you can.
I think.
Yeah. Let's be fair. There were problems with Suicide Squad that were beyond their control.
Exactly.
She had legit screen presence.
Yeah,
that impressed me.
And
even though she was coding CGI the whole time.
Well, see, and
she was better than Jared Leto.
But I really liked.
But then that's not saying much.
I really liked her in this a lot, more than I thought I would. And
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not convinced about Dane DeHaan.
I think he's a good actor, and I think he's got a future, but. Yeah. This is not the ideal role for him, which I think was part of the point.
I think, I mean, he wasn't you don't look at him and think sci-fi action star. He is no Bruce Willis. He is no Harrison Ford.
Well.
I still remember him from Chronicle. Like, he's the guy who sits in the back of your classroom being super sullen and scratching Linkin Parks into
trust me.
Into his desk.
When he attacked Seattle, if I were in his class, I'd be like, you know what? He would. He does look like the type. Like I'm so shocked, but I'm not surprised. Yeah. But and so.
Well, I just want to piggyback off of this for a second. I think you bring up an interesting point. He is no Bruce Willis. He is no Harrison Ford. The question is, was he ever supposed to be? Because I thought the power of this was that he's kind of like this misguided kid in space, who can't figure out how to carry on a relationship, who has to grow up to a certain degree.
But he's acting like he's the jaded veteran.
Yeah. I think, but that's besides the point. Honestly, it wasn't too distracting. I was more impressed with her, and I think it was really nice that in Fifth Element you kind of have Mila Jovovich playing. It's as one of my friends pointed out, the Born Sexy Yesterday character. She's
That's a really good description, by the way.
Yeah,
we need to put that in the T.H.O. lexicon.
There's a whole video I watched. It was 15 minutes long about that whole trope. But that's for a later date. But so she's naive. She doesn't understand the world. She's literally reading a dictionary to figure out what's going on in the world because she's been asleep.
Multipass.
But she can kick ass, and she's so strong, and she can really handle herself. She's just not street savvy. As well as you got Cara Delevingne, who is very smart, and on top of that is not putting up with any of Dane DeHaan's shit.
Yes.
But she still I love that he goes, "Marry me," and she goes, "No." And he's like, she goes, "Because you have a past, and I'm not putting up with that shit, and I'd be dumb to try it. And like, this is fun, let's keep it where it's at." And then, but she does love him, and I love the relationship between the two. It was nice to see.
I thought they had pretty good chemistry.
Well, it's not every movie where they drop you in the middle of a relationship with a character, or with two characters where it's like already so far in.
Right.
Without it later turning out one of them cheated on one another. Then we have to deal with their bullshit. And so, but no, this is like they get along, they like each other, they help each other out, they were great as a team. And on top of that, they just don't want to take the next step. Why? Because she's not dumb. She's like, "I'm not dumb, and no, I'm not going to marry you, but I'm still going to try and save your ass at any point."
Well, before I get into what I think these movies are about, I want to say one more thing in favor of Dane DeHaan. I'm also a really big fan of Chronicle, and I thought why he was so great in Chronicle was he's great at playing a good person who I think wants to live a good life, but gets warped, gets twisted, goes down the wrong path. I thought he was very good in Valerian at sort of playing like the opposite thing. He's he wants to be better than he is, and this time he plays a character who falls on the light side of that equation.
He's also a little skeevy, but but you don't hate him.
yeah, you don't hate him. Yeah.
I like that we didn't have to deal with his past, other than just the fact that it was like, oh, by the way, you have a past. We don't have to watch you be a womanizer.
Just sum it up. Yeah. But I mean, as for what these movies are about, I agree with you guys. Love, majorly important theme in both of these. But I also think Mo, you're gonna hate me for dragging us back into one of our, making it feel like we're back in one of our PSU film classes, but we always got lectured about this phrase, the cinema of attractions, and why people went to the movies originally was they weren't looking for story, they weren't looking for the kinds of narratives we see now. They went to see things like wow,
spectacle.
Yes, there is a train on a giant screen that looks real. There are some guys robbing a train. I sort of feel like Luc Besson is kind of in that spirit, because if you look at Valerian, it's very much there's similarities to Avatar. I actually think it's better than Avatar, but that's an argument for another day. But they're same thing, trying to save this race of aliens that's been done wrong, but he doesn't play that narrative too hard. He mostly just wants to.
It's not too preachy.
It's not. He wants to kind of indulge in these visual flourishes of the City of a Thousand Planets. The giant hulking creatures, the shopping center that for no apparent reason is in another dimension.
It's for loss prevention.
well, there you go.
My whole question is how can you be walking on a flat piece of land yet fall 4 stories down? Don't want to get into it. Like, what does that look like from the desert side? Just a person and then falling onto his face, like. Anyway,
if Luc Besson asked those kinds of questions, the movie probably would have never been made. But
he's like, shh, don't shatter the illusion. These people look like idiots in the desert.
Right. But I think I honestly think Besson, I think he has ideas he wants to get across, but I also think he likes to play. I also think he's like, I want to see, weird CGI creatures that are trying to dress Cara Delevingne up and then feed her to their warlord.
Oh, yeah.
I think he has fun, and I think,
that hat. Oh my god, that hat.
Yeah,
When she was walking up, I was like, that hat looks like a plate.
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh, yeah. And
it could translated so well. I was like, oh my god.
It reminds me of Grant Morrison to some extent.
oh sure.
But better able to handle all the ideas. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to go on a tangent about Grant Morrison because
By all means.
Because I don't know who he is.
Grant Morrison is a comic book writer. He's best known for being part of the British invasion of comics in the 80s, where he brought a lot of weird ideas to books like to Animal Man and to Doom Patrol, and they turned these C and D list characters into big unique names. And Grant Morrison, he does really good. He writes really well, but a lot of the times he'll try to cram as many ideas as he can into a story, and it just doesn't work. So one of my favorite examples is Seven Soldiers. One of the issues, we see a character going from this magical city underneath New York up to the streets of New York, and they pass through the subway, and then they pass by, I think it was called the Hydra, and it's all these runaway kids who were living in the subway underneath Manhattan, who developed a connected hive mind as a survival mechanism to keep each other alive. And they're there for one panel, and then they're gone, and they're never mentioned again.
Oh my god.
And it's why was that there?
Was that if we get around to it later,
I don't know. It's just here's some of the weird crap that exists. Just maybe he'll write something more about it later. Maybe he won't.
Oh my gosh, that sounds exactly like The Fifth Element. You're right.
Yeah,
That's the best example. It's you're just so all of a sudden this person walks by what the fuck's going on there? No, we don't have time to talk about that. Will we ever? No.
Maybe we'll see. No, we won't.
Well, he says we'll see, but the world is never ready for Luc Besson or a Luc Besson sequel.
So, that's kind of what it reminds me of. But Luc Besson is able to handle it better, for me at least. It reminds me of the good parts of Grant Morrison because he's able to loop it back to the story. I'm going through Grant Morrison's run on Animal Man right now. And there's a lot of weirdness to it, but it always loops back to Buddy Baker, it loops back to his family, it loops back to him as a hero in the DC universe. Mm-hmm. And Fifth Element and Valerian both do that. They always loop back to their heroes. And that's... the ideas feel grandiose and extraneous, but they're not too distracting.
Yeah. Well, and they're of a piece of kind of his whole style. I think, there are some filmmakers where it would be really distracting if they tried to do that. It would be really distracting if, James Cameron or Christopher Nolan, were going on these weird detours because you expect these kind of airtight narratives from them. But, Besson, it's he's the master of his own creative sandbox. It's a different kind of world, I think. Yeah. But one thing. Yeah, no dissenting on that, I guess. But one thing I want to get into with you guys, which plays off of this, is that these movies are to a certain degree, I think, screwball comedies.
A little bit.
Because there's a lot of rushing around in a humorous manner, as I talked about. They don't really have the pomposity of a lot of space operas. And I think about the idea that in The Fifth Element, a guy gets shut in a freezer and it's a joke, and and you think he's dead for a time, and then in Valerian, there's that scene where they're communicating, and someone's like, where's the commander, and they have to drag his unconscious body across the sand, and for some reason the way they play it's funny. It's oh, we gotta drag this guy who looks like he's dead over here, kind of this madcap morbid wit. And yet, I mean, it's in these movies that, are... They're Save the Universe movies. They're playing with much the same, kinds of narrative tropes as, Star Wars or Star Trek, where there's a problem, of, arguably a galactic scale, and our heroes have to solve it. So, I wonder, I want to hear from you guys, starting with you, Max, do you think, to a degree, like, this is almost like a satire or a commentary on these sci-fi films that take themselves more seriously, and it's Besson's way of saying lighten up, guys, have a little bit of fun with life and death?
I don't know. I feel like Besson is one of those directors that just does what he wants. I mean, I think, not to say that he doesn't do things with purpose, but I don't know if he thinks that many steps ahead. Like,
sure,
it's so hard. It's so hard to gauge because you look at something like The Fifth Element or Valerian, where so much is happening on screen at any given moment, and which I think accents when there isn't a lot going on.
Right.
And again, as Mo pointed out, like all of a sudden you see one sequence where apparently they're fishing for people with butterflies, and they get captured, but not. It doesn't. But we're not going to talk about the butterfly fishing or why Valerian seems to find the best way to catch one of these butterfly.
And I've actually forgotten about the butterflies until now, which just goes to show how much
so much is happening. I think Luc Besson just. I think maybe he's like I think maybe it could be that could be his commentary which is lighten up, but the way he translate that is just by I'm just gonna do this thing. It doesn't need to be serious. Not like lighten up. Don't be so serious. I think he maybe just like lead by example. Like it doesn't have to be serious.
Sure.
I think. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of movies, no matter what the genre lately, have to have this air of seriousness or darkness to it. And I think Luc Besson just goes, I mean, sure, if it allows it, but this kind of is fun. This is also based off of a comic book.
Right.
And I think...
Valerian and Norley.
Yeah, and I think it plays well like that. It's kind of ridiculous, but I wouldn't... It's so hard to say if he is doing it to make commentary or if he's just doing it and that's what is being translated. He's like, okay, cool, I'm glad you got that from it. Like, it's so hard to tell which artist, because those are the artists. Some artists just do things and it's like, well, that's the message you got, cool. And sometimes they do it with purpose, but I don't know which one Luc Besson really is, other than Luc Besson does what Luc Besson wants to do. Whether that is an Italian mob movie or a space opera.
Well, it's always perilous, I think, pinpointing a director's exact intentions.
Yeah.
And it's more, but yet there's this very interesting result where, I sort of see, The Fifth Element as, as you guys have probably heard me say, is kind of a forerunner of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah.
But then you look at Guardians of the Galaxy and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 even more so. There are all these very, serious undercurrents and, as playful as Volume 2 was, it was going through this, very kind of melodramatic narrative with, Peter Quill's father, with the sacrifice of Yondu, with even, ending a pretty funny movie in a kind of a downbeat, reflective way. And I just find it so intriguing, like, that Besson, makes even Guardians of the Galaxy look heavy.
Yeah.
He's clearly having so much fun. I mean, he already started writing the sequels to Valerian. So.
Did he really?
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, but...
it depends on how it does. I imagine it's going to do well in France.
Yes, yeah.
See, and
France it will do fine.
And that was the thing, when Valerian ended, I was like, oh man, I would have loved to see what happens more with these characters. And I was like,
oh yeah, totally.
Probably not going to happen though.
Yeah,
was my first thought. Because I was like, I would love to have seen a sequel to The Fifth Element. Like, I don't know where you would go from there.
You can't really go anywhere from there, because, I mean, Lilu served... this is a very reductive thing to say, but Lilu served her purpose. Like, she did her job.
Sure.
Yeah,
she saved the world.
I mean, she saved the world, and now the evil's gone, and even 5,000 years from now, the evil won't return because it's been dealt with. But you're right. I mean, again, but I would love to have lived in that world a little bit longer.
Oh,
like,
definitely.
I would love to have... maybe explored some of this weird shit we saw. But, so that's why I felt the same way at the end of Valerian, which is, oh man, I would love to see more from here. Probably not going to happen, though. But I would love to see it happen.
It's kind of a shame that it's like, I mean, and this sounds like a pejorative, but I mean this as a compliment. Both The Fifth Element and Valerian are kind of messy, And the thing about messy movies is they take a long time to kind of like work their magic on people. It's the kind of thing like where, I think people come back years later and, start to go like, wow, there's something about that keeps drawing me back. Kind of like what happened with Blade Runner. And the messy movies in a way are almost the ones that I think deserve sequels the most, because it's like, those are interesting worlds.
Well, what is the common theme is, stop remaking good movies. Let's start taking bad movies and trying to remake them into what could have been a good movie.
That's kind of what happened with The Thing. I can't speak to the original The Thing from Another World.
Right.
But
Oh wait, are we talking about The Thing with John Carpenter?
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Right.
I never saw it. I mean, I like that movie's so good that people don't realize it's actually based on something else sometimes.
Right.
I always forget. I'm like, oh yeah.
Or how Mad Max 2 is just a remake of Mad Max, but with an actual budget.
Yeah.
Mo, what about you? Do you feel that the satirical element is there in Valerian and the Fifth Element?
Well, we are getting into author intent, and that's tough to pin down. I haven't seen a lot of press that Luc Besson has done for his movies. I haven't read interviews with him. I haven't seen him share his thoughts about them. So just working off the work, going by the work alone, I don't think I see them as satires. I think it's just, it is an alternative, but I think it feels like what Max said. It's his taste. Like, this is kind of what he likes to do. He likes to have fun with his movies. He likes to crack jokes. Like, it's sci-fi that's allowed to be fun. Or that's allowed to be funny, which, we're living in a post-Guardians of the Galaxy age, so that doesn't feel like a radical statement.
Right.
It's, like I said before, these are very earnest movies. Like, they're very upfront about, this is about emotions, and this is about love, and that's not something you see a lot of movies in big-budget sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like, especially with Christopher Nolan, who, again, in one of his best features is Inception, which is about how this main character's emotional ties to his dead wife are preventing him from doing the job.
Yes, absolutely.
So here it does feel a little refreshing that it's straight up about emotion. Yeah. That's what the story is.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think that
it feels like a Disney movie, honestly, like where love saves the world.
Yeah, there is a Disney-ish vibe. Yeah.
Well, I think it's nice that love saves the world, but it's not a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Like
it has more of an edge than the average Disney movie, like, for sure.
If you didn't have Disney going, oh no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't say that. You can't show that either. You can't show the genocide of an entire race. Oh, now you can, I think. I feel like Disney's loosened up on that one a little bit.
Right.
Well, they got. I hope so, because Pocahontas was a disaster.
but you bring up an important thing. I think sort of how this is something different and how his taste is different, because I think about I mean there are a lot of similarities between this and say Star Trek Beyond or Rogue One. But those movies, to me, like for better or worse, I think there's a rigidity to them. They follow these kind of very, very classic outlines. Like there is a universe-destroying threat. We have to stop it. Valerian and the Fifth Element follow those outlines too, but in a way that's like we're kind of out to have a party, Chris Tucker is coming along with his wigs,
Chris Tucker's
different world. Yeah.
Chris Tucker's gonna be there. Gautier is doing all the costumes. I mean, Eric Serra, great music.
And they're going to play a shape-shifting burlesque dancer. It's going to be a party.
In a bowler hat.
In a bowler hat. She was the best part of that movie. I'm going to say it.
She was great. She was great,
I actually did not think she was the best part of that movie. I think she was a really great part of that movie until they make her talk during the fight sequence. I was like,
I thought that had a charm.
I don't know. That felt a little too cartoony.
It felt very cartoony, but it worked for me because she's got chops as an actress.
She does.
Yeah.
And
that was not a slant.
There's definite personality and charm to her. So I'd like to see her do more acting roles.
So here's
I
one
was like
thing.
legitimately sad when her character died.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about.
Segue into
Because, I remember, A.O. Scott saying, like, the character is kind of cruelly discarded. And to a certain degree, I agree with what he was saying, because, there's, this character is basically an undocumented immigrant who Dane DeHaan exploits, and then she dies for him, doesn't get what she was promised. And while I want to believe that, Luc Besson has some awareness about that and was, saying like, oh, this is a metaphor for how, immigrants everywhere get exploited. I just can't quite, believe that, because it sort of felt like she came in, gave this great performance, and then the character is almost like used as a plot mechanism, as a crutch who gets tossed aside, and I found it a little distressing, to be honest.
I like Rihanna. I think she actually is a pretty good actress. I think she doesn't. I always have a soft spot for actors who are just getting started.
Yeah.
And you watch them in a performance, and sometimes you're just like, okay, maybe they weren't well directed, and maybe the writing wasn't good, but that doesn't mean they're a bad actor or actress. I think she did a great job acting this role.
Yeah.
And I loved every part of it. Like I said, the only issue I had was just the little quips here and there during the fight. So it reminded me of like a video game, but not like a fun way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I did kind of feel that same way. I was like, oh, here is this great part. She's so interesting. Like we're gonna use her to do this thing, and then she dies. And I was like, well, wow, that was really nice of him to make a promise that he didn't have to keep.
Right,
and also at one point, while I was
Yeah.
watching that entire fight, I didn't see her get hit once. How did she get mortally wounded in battle? Like even she was like, I must have gotten hurt while I was up there. I was like, because now I'm dying, and I was like, but that sequence other than those few things, it doesn't make it a bad role, and I wanted more of her, and I was genuinely sad to see her go, and I think Rihanna did a great job. I really hope to see her do some other roles. That was honestly perfect for her, because she's kind of a weird chick in a great way, and she needed to be in a weird movie. She did not need to be in Battleship. She needed to be in Valerian as a space trooper. It was so good.
I think what you just outlined is like, we've talked about the positives of the sort of like messy vibe in the movie. That's one of I would say the few drawbacks. That kind of like that you miss, like that you have like a moment like it's like, oh, she got hit, during the fight, but even she doesn't know.
Yeah, so I was like, I was a little confused by that. And I was like, and now she's gone. I was like, this is terrible. I don't even know what killed her, and now she's gone.
Yeah,
she doesn't even know what killed her. But but man, that was really. That death scene was actually really cool. It's so weird to say that death scene was cool. Somebody died and it was awesome.
There's a long, proud tradition of, finding tragic deaths really cool. Going back to
if they're done right.
Yeah, going back to the slaughter at the end of The Godfather and far beyond that. I mean, by the way, this is off topic, but I really hope that movie with Rihanna and Lupita Nyong'o that Ava DuVernay wants to direct. I hope that happens.
I think she's producing, but I don't know if she's directing.
Oh, she's okay. She should direct it.
Wait,
that would be cool.
What?
Okay, so there was a thing on Twitter where it was a snapshot of Rihanna and Lupita Nyong'o, and
just being beautiful together.
Just being beautiful. They were at like some fashion show, like in the audience together.
Oh yeah.
And someone posted pictures like, this looks like a movie where Rihanna is a grifter who gets. Who cons money out of rich white dudes, and Lupita Nyong'o, who is wearing glasses, is her tech-savvy partner. And so someone's like, that should be a movie. And a lot of people are like, that should be a movie. And Ava DuVernay was like, okay, I'll produce that, I'll make that a movie. And Issa Rae is writing the script.
Oh my god.
She's writing the script? I didn't know that part. That's cool.
I think that's it. This was back in like April, or May when I
I don't
read
care. You've just listed off so many great things that are happening. So yeah.
Come back for our podcast about it.
Oh my gosh, now we have to.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys one more thing. With 20 years later, we're still talking about the Fifth Element, and we have anniversaries of movies all the time, but that is pretty remarkable. We're not talking about it just because Bruce Willis was in it or because it made over 200 million worldwide. We're talking about it because it means something to people. The reaction in the audience at the Hollywood Theater when we saw it, is a testament to that.
It's also a cult movie now.
Yeah. And then we're coming into Valerian, which, it has a lot of the same things. Theoretically, it could go down the same path. So I want to hear from you guys, starting with you, Mo. Why do you think The Fifth Element has endured for 2 decades, and do you think Valerian is going to have the same kind of staying power?
With The Fifth Element, I think it's, for lack of a better phrase, there's not quite anything like it. Like, it's this very particular brand of weirdness and earnestness that it sells really well. It looks spectacular even so many years later because of a lot of the practical effects. There's a lot of charm to it, honestly. Like, just seeing the aliens in the first scene and them awkwardly shuffling around the pyramid. There's just so much fun in it. There's so much energy and life to it.
Thank you to Chris Tucker being the adrenaline shot that has made that movie stay alive forever.
Yeah.
The movie really gets going once they get on the cruise ship.
Yeah.
Because that's when you got Chris Tucker. That's when you got
all the action sequences.
All the action sequences.
The diva Flava Laguna.
You got
the diva.
Lilu interacting with more people. You've got Gary Oldman just being Gary Oldman the whole time.
Oh my god, so good.
What was this character's name? Zorg?
Zorg.
Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg.
Zorg.
That's pretty great.
That sounds like a very French name.
They changed it when he came to Ellis Island. It's weird and it's fun, and there's a very optimistic timelessness about it. I don't know if Valerian will go down the same road. It relies a lot on the CGI, which today does look spectacular.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's how well that'll age. When I was talking to Ben about this, one of my favorite things about Valerian is just how spectacular and amazing the CGI looks. And a lot of the practical effects don't. They just look super cheap, but it's really charming how cheap they are. So, the hallways of the spaceship look like you're about to go on Space Mountain at Disneyland. And
see, I didn't even look that closer to the set.
Clive Owen's hat is basically just a soldier's hat with some circuitry glued on it. It looks super cheap, but it's... Again, the earnestness, they sell it. I love it.
Yeah.
And again, with The Fifth Element, she jumps through a wall. The wall is just gold tinfoil.
Yes. But yeah, you're look at that, you're oh, the wall's just gold tinfoil. 20 years later, we're still it's still really cool for some reason. I remember noting that a few years ago. I was oh wow, that literally is just tinfoil. And she just jumps right through it. Has nobody ever tried this? Is that supposed to make her look super strong? Because 15 years later, it just looks why didn't anybody else just try diving through the wall? Did she just find the only?
Why did they make the wall out of gold?
Well, they're well, it's great for sandwiches.
Why not make a wall out of it?
Medical facility, of course.
It's immune to radiation.
There we go. So but yeah, you're right. That's a great point.
I don't know if Valerian will have the same sticking power as The Fifth Element. I would like it if it did, because I like this movie and I want it to get more respect and more attention. I feel like it will once it hits cable. It'll get some more followers.
Yeah.
Once it hits streaming, it'll get some more followers. So, I'm hopeful for it.
I don't know if
Not necessarily optimistic, but hopeful.
Okay.
I don't know if there was ever a scenario in which it was going to make tons and tons of money, but he also may have just opened it at the wrong time of year because he had to compete against Apes, Dunkirk, Spider-Man.
Because this came out right at the end of July, right?
Yeah.
I really think you should have dropped it in August. Remember?
I
wrote a big piece about...
What are we competing with now? The Dark Tower?
Yeah.
Woo, stiff competition.
Well, and I wrote a big piece about August release movies.
Yes.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
This would have been a great August release. And to answer your question that I know you were eventually going to ask, but since I'm already talking,
Fire away.
I feel like I agree with Mo. I don't know if it'll have the same sticking power, but also at the same time, I don't know if I left The Fifth Element going, my mind blown. I was just more like, wow, that was a really good movie, which is what I thought about Valerian. So I think only time truly will tell. You could look back at The Fifth Element and look at the practical effects, which still hold up to this day. Who knows? Maybe because we're so many years later into CGI, maybe the CGI will actually hold up because of what they do with it. Because it's not what it is; it's how you use it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, maybe they use tinfoil wall, but 20 years later, we're still doing okay with it. We all seem to be really all right with it. Like, so
it fits in with the spirit of the whole thing. That kind of.
It does, and who's to say if that spirit will live on? But I also was having a really hard time. I have a friend who also reviews movies, and I wish I could plug it right now because I can't remember the name of it. But he went and saw Dunkirk. And then he saw Valerian, and he said he enjoyed Valerian more than he did Dunkirk.
I enjoyed Valerian more than I did Dunkirk.
I know we're in the Nolan Palace shrine of Bennett Campbell Ferguson's house, but
I mean, it's not a palace; it's a whole damn city. Thank you so much.
City of 1,000 Nolans. Anyways, so he was like, honestly, I enjoyed Valerian more. He actually saw Valerian twice, and he saw Dunkirk, and he goes, nope, I still like Valerian more and then he liked Dunkirk, and he said, but he also kind of had a crush on both the leads, but he was like, it's a very fun movie, and I think it's really weird, I feel like, once I hit June of movie watching, my whole perception of how the rest of the year was going to go was already skewed, because I was like, I just saw Captain Underpants, and it was pretty good. Like, it should, like better than I really feel Captain Underpants should have been.
Yeah.
It worked really well. And then I was like, all of a sudden I was like, alright, this is a great year for movies.
This is a
so
great year.
It's so
No
hard
doubt
to
about
determine.
that.
I feel like if this was 2015, I'd be like, geez, Valerian is so good compared to everything else. But I was like, there's a lot of really great movies. So I was like, Valerian was pretty good. So I guess maybe it's a really good movie being viewed through the filter of a really great year for movies. Maybe it's just par for the course, but I would agree with Mo. I have hope. I would like to see Valerian live on. I would love to see all movies 20 years later be just as good as the first time you watched it. It doesn't happen.
I'd like Luc Besson to keep working in sci-fi.
Yeah.
And I think he should. I don't think he should stick strictly to sci-fi, but I think it's just a testament. Sometimes, maybe if you just pour your everything into a project, which I've always believed, you just get something that's good and just does stand the test of time. Why? Not always true.
Not always true. I mean, we have the collective works of Neil Breen to look at.
Who's Neil Breen?
He is the new age Tommy Wiseau.
Okay.
We're not gonna listen to that. But I mean, maybe people with clout. I don't know. But Luc Besson just doing Luc Besson and going, "This is my product," and then people go, "Well done. That is nice. You're right. Well, carry on."
You said you liked The Fifth Element the first time you saw it, but do you like it more now? Is it something? It kind of grew on you over time, or
the beauty of The Fifth Element, and I believe we talked about it when we went and saw it, is that I feel like, and not every time I watch it, but every like so many much time I put between it, I catch something I didn't see before, whether it's a person walking in the background or tinfoil walls, or the latest realization that I didn't catch until I saw it on the big screen last year when it was at Cinetopia in HD, which if you get a chance to see The Fifth Element, I recommend seeing it in HD if you can, but the 35mm not bad either. But what I did notice, I didn't realize, it takes place over the span of 48 hours. The Fifth Element.
Right.
I don't think it's a quick one line, real fast. Like, by the way, this thing is gonna crash into Earth in 48 hours, and then we watch everything that happens, and it's so big. It feels like it goes on for days, but then you gotta remind yourself, oh, not even 2 days have passed yet, and this is, so I think. I think that is the sign of a great movie, is that, it's good the first time, but it gets better with each viewing.
Yeah.
And so I would honestly need to watch Valerian a few more times. But it's already on the right foot, which is I watched it and I didn't hate it.
That's true.
Which makes me go, I would like to watch this movie again.
That's a good start for any beautiful
That's
movie,
a great
really.
start for any movie, and that doesn't always translate into years worth of rewatching and it holding up, but maybe it will.
Yeah.
It's really hard to gauge what will and will not stand the test of time. Superbad recently just had its 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
I remember
that's crazy.
I remember like 5 years afterward, people would have been like, I can't believe that was 5 years ago. But 7 and 8, no one seemed to care about Superbad. But then we look back at it 10 years, we're like, wow, you know what? There's a lot of nostalgia here and a lot of weird things that you never noticed. Like, oh, this is actually pretty okay. And then, but at year 7 or 8, I think people would have looked back at Superbad and been like, oh man, I was so immature then. Like, I can't believe I watched that when I was whatever age you were.
Well,
Right.
I'm trying to think of like how the comedy landscape has changed since then, because that was like peak Judd Apatow bromance movies.
Yeah.
And then where are we now? Like what's tearing up box office in terms
As far
of
as
comedy?
I mean, this summer it'd be Girls Trip.
Girls Trip or The Big Sick.
The Big
or-
Sick.
Big Sick. Oh yeah, I
Maybe-
finally saw that, and I loved
Which
it,
is
by
funny
the way.
because-
you guys were right.
Which is funny because that one's Judd Apatow produced and it's actually pretty good, but that is not par for the course for the last 6 years, I would say. Like,
No.
just because Judd Apatow
No.
produced it did not mean that it was going to be good.
Or God, what are the other big comedies that have come out recently?
I would.
We're getting off track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to take this tangent a little bit further,
Go
but
for it.
I think there was a sort of a Judd Apatow formula that was really adopted by Wedding Crashers and The Hangover as well, which is that you have this really vulgar comedy, but you package it in kind of a wholesome story where things work out very nicely in the end. And I think that sort of became tainted forever by The Wolf of Wall Street, because then you have an R-rated comedy where it's like there's no redemption. He starts out as a horrible person. He ends as a horrible person.
He starts out as an okay person, and then
I don't know if I would go that far.
It's my recollection of the movie is just he started off as just an okay nobody. Like he wasn't bad or good. He just was, and he was very easily taken in by by all the money.
Sure, that's a good point. Yeah. But the thing is
I'm not saying this to forgive Jordan Belfort.
No, absolutely not.
No, fuck that guy.
But yeah, agreed. But the thing is, now that sort of vulgar yet wholesome narrative is tainted because I like The Hangover. Yeah, I like Wedding Crashers. But The Wolf of Wall Street, kind of show that narrative's sort of to a degree bullshit. Because it's
and also upon closer inspection, it's like, okay, now you learned your lesson, but you were still a piece of shit for the last hour.
Yes,
Like,
that is the thing of it.
It's it's one of those, until you look real closely at it, you're like, wait a second, this is just one shiny turd.
I'm thinking of at least 2 other movies. Cedar Rapids, which is far outside of that mold.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, Ed Helms.
And Hot Tub Time Machine, which was the poor man's Hangover, for lack of a better term.
It was.
And they're both times when we have this character, this zany, off the wall party animal, and it's like, oh no, this person is really sad and clearly has some depression going on, and there's their entire thing about chasing girls and getting drunk. That's a coping mechanism. That's them trying to be happy, and I don't know. And I'm thinking of BoJack Horseman because that's kind of the same thing, but it's very upfront about the fact that the main character has depression.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. Well, circling back.
That's the difference. The difference is that these sort of misanthropic characters, we're taking them more seriously. Like
that's true.
Like you look at like Rick from Rick and Morty. It's like, yeah, he's a funny character, but he obviously is just filled to the brim with existential dread and self-loathing, and he buries it in hedonism and drugs and alcohol, and it's not healthy. Like it's not only unhealthy, it's toxic. It's destroying his family.
Sure.
Now we're in the thick of it. So we got Wedding Crashers with Owen Wilson, who's a little depressed because he's kind of tired of the game.
But he's depressed in kind of an acute way.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, not like
as opposed to the real Owen Wilson.
Right.
Well, so we
yeah.
have Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, who start out basically, literally the first minute of the movie, the same kind of person, which is, let's go to these weddings. Let's take advantage of these wedding women.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes and several pairs of boobs later, all of a sudden Owen Wilson's like, oh, maybe I'm not happy with this. Maybe this is a problem. And Vince Vaughn kind of fights against it. So we watch this whole thing happen. Do you think that at some point someone was like, those characters are interesting. What if we just take it a step further? Is that how we got to where we are now? Which is, what if we just know the characters are really sad? Not just kind of sad, but really sad.
I think that's exactly it.
It's have we swung oh, this kind of works to we're now in this extreme, but is it working?
Because
it works with BoJack Horseman. I agree.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's all the characters nowadays. Like, they're not just kind of secretly sad. They're kind of very secretly sad.
I'm trying to think of what the other examples. You're the Worst, where we spend a season where one of the characters has clinical depression, and they're just straight up front like, these people are misanthropic and they're angry, and it's funny, but then again, it's destroying their lives. This is self-destructive behavior. They are the architects of their own misfortune. F is for Family does the same thing. Comedies are taking themselves more seriously.
Yeah, well, isn't it? That's, and I think that's always kind of been. I think you're either the jerk, which is just straight up if I were to put this into food terms, it's just sweet and wonderful. It's like cake. There's nothing. It's just cake. It's wonderful. You enjoy it, and you do it in moderation.
Unhealthy.
It's unhealthy, but it doesn't do anything to change the landscape other than be tons of fun. And then, but when you add a character with a little bit of seriousness, it's like salted caramel. It makes that sweet so much better. That little bit of salt.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I like that.
And I really like. That's
metaphors.
Yeah, that's kind of like Juno, Up in the Air, director.
Jason Reitman. Yeah.
Jason Reitman. That's kind of his thing, and that's why I love his movies. I love that his characters are a little salty to go with the comedy. It works really well in Casual, which is the show he's produced for Hulu, and that's his character. It's like, oh man, he sure gets a lot of tail, but God, is he depressed.
I think it's the natural trajectory, really, of any genre. You look at the superhero genre, from the innocence of the Christopher Reeve first Superman film to kind of the depravity and cynicism of Deadpool.
Yeah.
That's...
I wouldn't say it's cynical, but it's...
I think it is cynical, because I think it's
making...
it's making a mockery of all these conventions that, are kind of held dear and taken, so seriously, and it's saying, it's poking fun of them and saying... superhero landing, that thing you thought that was cool in all those other movies, it's actually kind of dumb, I'm not saying it's dumb, I think the movie's
no, I wouldn't consider it
dumb.
cynical. I think it's that person going, really, guys? Ready? Here's the eye roll, here we go.
Right.
Yes, and I think it's it's almost it's as close as you can do to scary movie without doing scary movie.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So, addressing the tropes, as you will.
Absolutely. Yeah. You get to that kind of self-referential.
It works
point,
though. It worked really well. We have totally.
we are very
I cannot wait for
back.
I know. I cannot wait for you to upload this as like a separate chapter of the podcast. Just make sure you don't mention that this started out as a Valerian podcast. I'm good.
I might just leave this in. I don't know. It's got its own special magic.
I think
it adds texture and
Is that what we're
complexity.
calling it? Special magic?
That's what we're calling it.
Babbling.
Special magic trademark.
I'm gonna call it the bonus track at the end of an album that you didn't know was there. It was just all of a sudden a bunch of silence. You're like, wait, is the album over? And then, oh, here comes another song.
No, we're gonna talk about TV sitcoms.
And that's what this is. This is your bonus track for the day.
Well, I'll just to provide some semblance of continuity, I'll circle back to Besson for a second. I think when I think about this, I think about one of my favorite sci-fi films of the century, The Fountain, which isn't really a sci-fi film because it has a magic tree. But then that's another argument. Some people think it's sci-fi. I'm not going to.
Depends on where you classify your magic tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Although traditionally speaking, most magic trees fall into fantasy category.
If it's a magic tree in space, then it's sci-fi.
Oh, it's a magic tree in space.
Magic tree
magic tree in space. So here's the thing. I remember seeing that movie for the first time, and at the end, Hugh Jackman explodes in an inferno of light in the midst of space, it's really weird and trippy and
spoilers.
And I thought, at the time, I don't remember if I laughed aloud in the theater, but I thought it was really unintentionally funny. I thought it was ridiculous. Turn the wheel, over a decade later, I now watch that scene and find it incredibly moving, and I think it's a metaphor for him accepting death, blah blah blah. I take it seriously now, and I look back and think, wow, I did not get that movie. And, I think The Fifth Element was, it did well at the box office, but like in the United States, like it wasn't like, a Die Hard or an Alien or something.
No.
And so obviously, something has happened since it was released, and maybe that will happen with Valerian as well. I kind of think it won't because it's so similar to The Fifth Element that I kind of think
it's not original.
Yeah, it's not fresh anymore. I think people want that kind of vibe. They'll say I want the one with Chris Tucker.
It didn't come out of nowhere.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I actually read a really interesting article from Cinema Blend that talk about. They draw comparisons to when The Fifth Element was released to when Valerian was released, and that actually has about the same critical reaction as The Fifth Element, almost to a T, which is the critics either loved it or they hated it.
Yeah.
There's no in between. So the scores actually level out to about what you would see on a Rotten Tomato score as average, because so sorry. Critics were like, this is a mess, there's not enough going on here, and some people were like, this is perfect, this is wonderful, I love it, I can't wait to see it again, and that's really, so, again, we talk about, will this actually stand the test of time? It's actually hitting a lot of the same notes as The Fifth Element, so the only way to really know is 20 years from now, are we going to be doing a podcast about this?
Yeah, that's a fair question, yeah.
Let's find out.
In 20 years from now, I'll be 46.
I'll be almost 50. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about this, okay? I don't need to think about my death quite yet.
Well, you guys have anything else you want to say about Besson before we wrap up?
I'm kind of interested to see some of his other stuff now. I kind of want to see Lucy.
Oh. Yeah. I never saw Lucy. Yeah.
Lucy was okay.
All right.
Again, it's weird. It's like if Luc Besson does not be Besson enough, it doesn't quite resonate the right way.
Sure.
Oh wait, I didn't get to make this joke. Will Fifth Element or will Valerian last as long or have the same stand, or what's the word I'm looking for? Longevity as The Fifth Element?
Yeah.
I don't know. The Fifth Element had a certain je ne sais quoi about it.
Yeah.
French stuff.
I don't know what that means.
Oh boy.
Well, I think that is the perfect note to end on. All of you who are out there, assuming you're out there, thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, please click thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all the great reviews and content we have at THOmoviereviews.com. THOmoviereviews.wordpress.com.
We'll get it right someday.
Well, one day, yeah.
We'll fix that in post. One day we'll also figure out how to post things.
We'll get a.
I should get a domain name too.
Yeah, we'll get like an actual domain or something.
Yeah, when we rule the world. Mwahaha.
Wahaha.
Once again, I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson. I'm here with Mo Shaunette. I'm here with Maxwell Meyers. And from all of us here at THO Movie Reviews, happy movie watching.
Au revoir.
Bye.